Hi, everybody, and welcome back to our coverage of the third and final season of Squid Game here on We Know Scripted TV and Nothing But Netflix. My name is Mike. We're talking about episode 2, Starry Night, and things are looking a little darker, unfortunately, up in the night sky as we have lost a fair number of stars in quite the devastating episode of Squid Game. But I'm never devastated to be talking with this man, especially to break down everything that happened in this episode. It is the one, the only Chappell.
Hey, Mike. We just watched some carnage. We watched some really sad, devastating things. And this might be my favorite episode in a long time. I loved it. Kill all these people. I don't care. This was so much fun.
Dude, I was gonna say the exact same thing.
Yes.
No
I was like, am I crazy?
No, oh my god, no. I mean, listen, the two of us might be off on an island, but so are all these people, literally. But
Yeah.
I mean, I was very much thinking that, not to say I didn't enjoy, a lot of season 2 and even some of the stuff we were doing last episode, but I would wager to say, Chappelle, that this honestly might be my favorite episode of Squid Game since season 1. And maybe it is because, we have largely shed, as we have made many mentions of, maybe the polarizing Jung-jae Captain Park of it all, and we really focused on what had us falling in love with the show in the first place, which is these beautiful victories and agonizing defeats, I suppose, to quote another hit Korean show back in the day. And this is just a very good reminder of just the absolute beauty that comes in this show, ripping your heart out at any point in time. But given the fact that as much as we are falling in love with these people, and as much as the fact that Gi-hun and his clan have kind of had a bit of plot armor around them, with the exception of poor Jung-jae, this is the Squid Game. At the end of the day, only one person can win, and especially in a game that's essentially a more antagonistic version of marbles, where essentially at least half the board has to be wiped out, it only makes sense, much like we saw in the first version of this, season 1, that hide and seek would unfortunately culminate in some truly tragic deaths and one birth as well.
Yeah, look at that. So for the people listening to the home, like, oh my God, that was gruesome. Why could y'all like this? Look, we got birth. There's new life here. There's a potential, spinoff right here. We're holding its baby. That's fine. But I think you're right, Mike. I think we got back to Squid Game at its core, which is anybody can go, except for like one person, obviously. But like anybody can go, and they're willing to put their lives at risk and take out other people's lives in order to make their lives better, seemingly, right? So like at the end of the day, the ends are supposed to be, worth it, right? They're supposed to be able to make it to the end and say, okay, sure, I killed hundreds of people, but I won, and now I'm going to be better, or now I'm going to have a better life, or whatever the case may be. And despite the bonds we might have, there can only be one winner if we're not going to, vote to end this thing. And so in this episode, we got to see these people actually stop participating in like this like communal game where they're like, okay, we're all trying to get through. We have these big alliances, to where we saw people faced with some really tough decisions where they had to choose themselves over other people that they normally would have worked alongside. And so, yeah, I think this is back to the season 1 feel of, you go into these episodes not knowing who's going to survive. And in this episode, I truly did not know, aside from one person, who was going to make it out alive.
Yeah, I mean, I will bring up, many things that I was both right and wrong about in our previous podcast, but one that I can definitely say I was incorrect about was this, this comment that I made towards the end of last podcast of like, well, the quote unquote heroes of this story, many members of Team X, including Gi-hun, were largely personified as like, okay, these are the good people. They're voting to end the games. They don't have a lot of blood on their hands. And I will say this episode promptly reversed that for many of these characters. We'll certainly get into a few of them who quite literally end with blood on their hands, and truly showcase, to your point, the complications of getting involved in a game like this, or, the inimitable reality TV comparisons that we make to Squid Game. This is a direct 1-for-1, right? Due to the fact that on any of these types of shows, Survivor, Big Brother, etc., yeah, you can work with these complete strangers and they can help you get farther. But at the end of the day, your goal is to win. It is quite literally, in this case, kill or be killed.
Or survive. And you know, that's the thing. Like, it's like, I might not have to kill you, but I got to make sure it's not me that is murdered here, right? Like, anybody but me definitely works in this situation for half of the people, and then for the other half, it's like, it's got to be somebody. You know, as long as I'm not standing here as the clock hits 0 without having a kill on my hands, then you know, I survive. I'm fine, but I have to make sure that happens. It's like everybody has like one win condition almost. It's like, just make sure it's not you this time. And so for a lot of people, we saw what that looked like, you know, teaming up, hiding, running, or whatever the case may be. But then we saw, you know, some emerging strategy. Mike, I was so impressed with some of the ideas that's going on here. MG Coin and Namju and this whole like, what if we team up and just take out a bunch of people, even if we won already? What does it hurt us if the Reds have less targets now? Because then now less of them will make it through. Like at the end of the day, we're going to do this one round, but some are playing the long game. We still have to take another vote. We still have to eliminate people in the future. Let's say we knock out a few people before we even end this round, some extra people, right? And I hadn't even considered that. So I was loving that the game is evolving right in front of us. This is fun.
There we go. We've already entered the new era of Squid Game. So there's a lot to get into, and I kind of want to focus first on the Gi-hun of it all, because he is largely separate from everybody else, which we can kind of all lump together, purposely so, because we saw this last episode. He was basically a ghost, but was had his soul, I guess, refueled with the idea of pure rage and revenge. He stands up at the end of last episode saying, "It's your fault." He will end this episode in tears saying, "It's all my fault." As I'll admit, again, something I was incorrect about. I did not know if he had it in him to murder Daeho. I totally thought that when we got Daeho sort of backed up to a cliff, that, you know, if Gi-hun still wanted to kind of escape with his morals intact, he could very easily just like intimidate him or even push him, you could say, again, whatever holds up in a court of law, to his death. But no, Gi-hun strangles the life out of this man. And here's what I will say. You and I, Chappell, have been, I wouldn't say big Daeho fans, but like certainly we've had fun with him over the course of a season and change. You know, this guy was presented as maybe part of the comic relief from, you know, the foppish way that he moved around in the very beginning. And I will say the way he went out took a real hit to his legacy, considering not only all the secrets that he fessed up to when his life was on the line, but also the fact that, like, maybe he knew that the jig was up, the die was cast, but like, I don't know, if you're trying to escape with your life, bad move to really egg this guy on by being like, hey, you know what? Actually, it is your fault.
Yeah. I don't know. There's so many layers to that. So I think the reason why we both kind of agreed that we didn't think Gi-hun had it in him was because at the end of the day, he's going to get to Daeho and realize, okay, I'm projecting, right? A lot of the things that happen are definitely my fault for sure. I shouldn't even be here, right? I already won this game. I shouldn't even be in this mix. I shouldn't have been leading that insurrection the way I was, especially because like these people don't know. These people do not like, they don't know like the levels of things, like the reason why I'm back in here. Like I'm basically leading these people to handle my business, right? And so maybe, just maybe, he's going to realize somewhere in this episode, look, that guy made a mistake, but people make mistakes. There are worse people around here. These people suck, and we haven't even got to them yet. And so it just didn't feel like it would be a natural place for him to go. But no, we just got there faster than him. He had to go on this actual hunt through the halls, through all the doors, and fight Daeho one-on-one. And I think Daeho was thinking the same thing. Like, maybe if I remind him, you know, that like this is his fault, that he will leave me alone. Because at the end of the day, I'm just trying to survive like everybody else. Sure, stolen valor, not great. You know, made up a whole bunch of stuff about myself. But look at what you did. Look at what you did. Like, you're taking this out on me as like a personal thing. You should be looking at this from a game sense. Bring me in, you know, let me survive. I'll help you in the future.
Help me help you.
Help me help you. But no, Gi-hun was done. He has been done. And he chokes the life out of this man. It's almost like almost like a crime of passion, you know. It's like
and it's wild because in the previous episode, right, when the Reds and Blues were arguing out loud about balancing the game properly, like, what are we supposed to do? We can't just kill these people with our bare hands. Turns out if you're fueled with enough vim and vigor, you actually can do that.
Yeah, and you know, Daeho's last words being like, you know, it's your fault, and Gi-hun having to sit with like, oh my god, it is my fault. You know, like that's such a good character moment because through this, we've probably been like on his same trajectory. We've been following him the whole time. So when his hair changed colors, we were right there with him. I was like, oh, revenge tour, let's go. And now that we see what the revenge tour means, going into the Squid Game the second time, he knows that he has to kill people in order to survive this. Like, he knows that he's saying that all these people are pawns in his ultimate chess game against the front man and against this system, the Squid Game that he's trying to take down. So that means whatever the game may be, right? Whether it's tug of war, battleship, the bridge game, marbles, he's got to survive. And that means people have to die in order for him to do that. And so he's taking a calculated risk that a lot of these people will die. But at the end of the day, I'm going to get what I want. And isn't that what's most important? And it's like, is it? Is it really? You're not that much better than the people you're around. So I think this was a good character moment for him, for sure.
Yeah, because what I sort of left this episode with is, where do we go specifically with this character next? Is he still going to be behaving like a shell of himself? If anything, could this have him recede further back when he's like, oh, God damn it, I had to kill Daeho to realize that it was my fault the entire time. But I do wonder, to your point, Chappell, and whether he realizes this in the moment or not is up for contention. But maybe he believes that, okay, I tried to stage this big revolution. It didn't work. The front man was in front of me. The only other solution now is to win the game. And then, like, maybe I'll be able to get that exclusive access to, like, formally do it again, which is wild, considering that that's exactly what he was doing at the beginning of season 2. But maybe he feels like proximity would help in this way. And so that's going to be a little deadly to even his closest allies too, right? Because he learned the hard way. There is really only one sole survivor of Squid Game. And so, listen, a number of his friends have been kind of pruned out in the process, not due to his own hand, but this new unlocked version, to your point, the red-haired version of Gi-hun that we have been waiting to see since that last scene of season 1 might finally be unlocked, but I'm a little afraid about what's behind that door.
Yeah, I mean, up until now, we've been assuming he's going to vote to end the Squid Game. Like, when they have the vote, like, okay, send everybody home. But why would he? At this point, why would he vote to end it? It undoes all the things that he's done to get this far. All those lives are now in vain, including the one he just, took with his bare hands. He needs to get to the front man. And I don't think ending the Squid Game and getting sent home, getting gassed and they take you out and you just blindfold you and drop you off on the middle of the street. How is that going to help you? So I think that now that he's in, he's with everybody else. Like, I'm staying until I can take down the people at the top of this thing. And I hope that we do get that, because right now I don't see how he comes back from this moment, right? Where he's in the hallway about to take his own life, essentially, right? Like, he's done. Yeah. I'm done. I'm over it. It's not worth it. And they shoot the knife out of his hand with expert marksmanship. Like, I'm talking about, how do you shoot a dagger for someone's hand?
I mean, this is the thing, though, is like, if Gi-hun really wanted to go through this, and this is an incredibly dark place, but this is an incredibly dark show, you got to do it lickety-split. You can't leave a moment for these triangle masks to sweep in and take this. The same thing with the last episode when he points the gun at his head, like, just commandeer it, do what you need to do in that moment. But I think Gi-hun was obviously in a place where he's like, I don't even know if I should do this. But I think that, again, you make some great points here, in that I think that the voting mechanism is essentially done, more from a metaphoric perspective. I think they're still doing it, but I think this game, and whether this was purposely put in by Inho and the producers or not, it's this idea where I think everyone is going to say, in for a penny, or a one at this point, in for a pound, of like, if I left the game now, whatever amount of money would not necessarily be worth what I just had to do to survive. I have gotten this far, doing this much. It has to be worth it. I need to keep going.
So what do you think brings him from this cocoon that he's now put himself in? Because he did not look like a guy who was like hell bent on revenge at the end of this episode. In fact, they had to save him from himself. Hey, this is totally worth it now. You're in. But like, what moment is he like, he sees the new baby? Maybe does he hear about the sacrifices people made? Like, I wonder what drags him out of this dark hole that he's in and gets him back into his, pink red hair or whatever, back in fighting trim.
I think it actually might be. I don't know how tongue-in-cheek you were about the baby, but like it honestly might be that, or hearing about, what happened with Jung-jae and her son, or what happened to 120. As much as I'm saying that now he has more of an individualistic, as long as it's not me mentality, it might be the fact that while yes, he is responsible for a good amount of the exes losing their life, especially Jung-bae, he's not responsible for this most recent batch. As I was mentioning,
Mhm.
he was off on his own in an entirely different storyline for this episode. The true villains are the games. So
Yeah.
this is very interesting because it might almost warp the perspective that he just came to a conclusion about, of like, my God, it's all my fault. They are the ghosts that are laughing in my ears, the way that the shaman was describing it. But wait a minute. No. From my perspective, the games are evil. Inho's the one that had us here in the first place. So maybe it does actually reinvigorate him from that perspective of like, in the micro, yes, I let some very good people die in vain, but a lot more people died due to the actions of this other guy.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the realization, because it has to come, right? There's no way we start the next episode with him being like, "Take me out of the game," and they're like, "Stop it," and then they just make we never continue the games. We
Is he
just
gonna
like,
pull a cue like, take me out? I'm done.
yeah,
Like,
I
we're not gonna
quit.
vote. You're
I'm
not gonna get you
done.
out of here.
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Like something has to kind of trigger that response that although we saw some really gruesome things happen, it's going to be worth it, because you have to take down, you have to break the wheel essentially, right? So you have to go in and do this thing. You have to see it through. And I think up until now, it looked like he was on a mission, and now we've derailed the mission a little bit. But we got a lot of season left, and so I'm waiting on what triggers the flip. And I don't know, maybe it's something that happens off, with the people off the island who we haven't seen. Maybe they finally find their way to to the island, and we get some some intel from Inho or Junho. I'm sorry, the other one. And so yeah, maybe he comes in. He's like, "Hey, I got some news" or something, and it just like gets him back, because right now it's grim. He survived this by murdering somebody who he thought he was friends with with his bare hands, and now he's about to find out everything else that happened. Right? People are about to report back, and they're like, "Oh yeah, like." Did you hear about, did you hear about this person? Did you hear about this person? Did you hear about this person? Like all the stories are gonna come flooding in. And I just don't think that's going to make him like want to fight even more. I think if that was me, I would shut down probably a lot more too.
Yeah, it'd be more flight than fight.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. I think we need a spark. We need something to get him back going. And maybe the front man realizes that too. Maybe the front man is going to come and kind of prod him, because he was watching the whole time. We kept getting clips of him just like staring at the screen. And so I'm thinking maybe because he saw the journey, he knows, all right, I need to go and hype up my villain a little bit more, my op a little bit more, so that I have more game to play.
Get him in the DR. Make sure that he's, not blanketing at the moment.
Exactly, because he does look like he's about to blanket for about a week.
All right, well, let's get to some of those new items that Gi-hun is going to find out about in a matter of time. And I guess we could talk about this like somewhat chronologically, right? Because we kind of have, I would say, the main crux of this episode, and indeed some of the most devastating things to happen on Squid Game in quite some time, in these two separate groups, and how it merges in so many ways towards the end. I mean, you talk about the gravity of Gi-hun taking Daeho's life, but can we talk about the absolute heel turn of MG Coin here? Because this took me completely by surprise. That, listen, I guess it's the fact that, as you mentioned, Chappell, this guy was a former crypto farmer. He's a numbers man. And so when Namgyu makes the argument of like, hey, if we keep wiping out blues, that also eliminates reds, he kind of approached it from a GameBot perspective.
It made so much sense. It made so much when he said it. I was like, damn, this guy's good. He's so good. I was like, honestly, I started thinking about this totally different. I'm thinking if you are like, at the end of the day, like you said, it's a numbers game. So if you are somebody who is going to survive this round, we never, I guess, considered the idea that once you survive the round, you weren't immediately just taken out of the game, right? There were some people,
and I guess we had assumed that was the case, considering that like it wasn't just a bunch of reds running around. I would imagine that for a lot of these people, they were so shell shocked by the murder that they committed, or they were so keen to get their one kill and get out of there, that like I would imagine a pink guard's like, okay, make an immediate beeline for the exit or something. But I didn't realize that you could just have the option of sticking around if you wanted to.
Yeah, and that you could split kills. There was a split vote in this game. It was so much coming from these two. Yeah, MG Coin is an interesting character because we know he's a bad guy. We know he's a bad guy, but it's kind of like at the back with the backdrop of all these other bad guys, he doesn't seem as bad. It's like
No.
there's a little crypto, whatever. I said that's fine. But then you're like, what about that baby? And you're like, well, he's going to take care of the baby mama. He's going to take care of the baby, so that's good. Like he has redeeming qualities that make you think, okay, he's on the up and up. And then something like this happens. You're like, oh yeah, this guy does suck. Like, yeah, there's a reason why, all these people in the Squid Game were mad at him. A lot of these people, back into when we started when season 2, and we talked about the crimes that got these kids into these positions. This is the newfangled crime, right? There in the crypto scamming and all that stuff. And he was at the center of it. So yeah, we've been looking at him almost as like an underdog in the face of all of that. They were all after him, Thanos and that whole crew were after him. And now it's like, oh, well, there's a reason. There's a reason. Those people, they didn't like you because you are a scammer. You're a charlatan. And this man is going to continue to do that. And he does not care who he has to work with. Because him working with Namgyu this episode was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, considering that Namgyu, he's trying to push this anti-Thanos regiment, but like he was right alongside him in the bathroom. Like he didn't stop Thanos from nearly strangling the life out of MG Coin. So yeah, it's a good reminder that it's almost Walter White-esque, right? That like he has this backdrop of, okay, I've got to be doing this for Junhee. I've got to be doing this for this baby, to the point where, hey, if you insist on taking the red, you can kill me. I'll be your one kill. But like, if this episode showed anything, it's that maybe deep down, he's doing a little bit of this to satiate some sort of bloodlust he has. He's not going full Minsu and physically manifesting his torturers, but that also might be the thing, despite the fact that, again, he powders up alongside Namgyu, is maybe he's just like, listen, these people all have my name in their mouths. I got to take out as many of them as possible, even when it culminates in, an incredibly tragic way. And that's also the fun of this as well, too, is like, he is trying to substantiate this with the idea of like, I just got to keep Junhee protected. Maybe that's another reason why he kills all these blues. It's like, hey, I want to clear a path so that Junhee's safe so I can get her to the exit, only to realize that one of those people included like her fiercest protector, maybe one of her closest allies. He tries to redeem himself at the end of the episode by pulling like a Rolf in The Sound of Music, right? By being like, there's nobody here, don't worry, and then just silently closes the door. But they are promptly off, I would say, when it comes to the MG Coin and Junhee on-off relationship. Any goodwill he has attempted over the past season and change got promptly erased when he stabbed 120 in the back.
Do you think he knew it was 120? Okay, because we see it from her perspective, right? So we see her looking at, like, her back is to him basically, and she's looking at the woman and the baby and the older woman, and like, so she's not even facing him. He kind of stabs her in the back, realizes it's her, and it's kind of like, oh well, like.
That's the thing. I think we need to talk with Inho about much like any sort of modern day race, they should put numbers on the front and back. We saw them on the front. I don't know if we saw the numbers on the back of the little bibs they were wearing.
Right. So I do think he can come back from this, especially if he didn't think it was like, if he can convince her, like, I was trying to save you. I thought somebody was after you or whatever. I told you I would clear a path, and I did. Look at all the people I killed. I did this for you. I did this for the baby. I mean, who else did she have to turn to? She just lost her biggest protector, and now he's her biggest protector. So I think he's in a good spot. My question is this bloodlust? Does he really care about this baby? Or is this man just greedy? Is he still trying to win the game because he's a scammer, and all of this is about the money anyway, and the numbers make sense, and now he has an even bigger reason to want the money. Now he can, like you said, now he can pull the Walter White and say, I'm doing this for my kid, even though deep down, he's probably doing it for himself. I would love to see kind of how this resolves itself, because my initial reaction was like, oh, you messed up. Oh, you messed up big time. But now I'm thinking, okay, but what else is she going to do? She going to raise this baby by herself now, like in the Squid Game? I highly doubt it. Are they going to let her keep this child?
Well, let's get into that as we get into the 3 women and a baby scenario that came with 120, 149, and Junhee here. First off, incredibly devastating set of circumstances to send out 120, who was one of my favorite characters by the time she unfortunately has her life snuffed out. But talk about freaking dying on your feet. This woman is a stone cold badass. She killed 2 people, and the only reason she died was because punk ass MG Coin came at her when she wasn't looking, when she wasn't able to
Mm-hmm.
defend herself. Otherwise, like, I don't know, Chappell, I would imagine that you thought this as well. The moment that her foot nearly crossed that threshold when she heard the congratulations song, it's like, listen, you're too noble. You're too good for the Squid Game. You signed your death warrant.
Did you know she was? Did you know she was doomed at that point? Did you like immediately know? See, for me, I was like, I thought that once she opened the door, there was going to be some like crazy thing, like you've opened it, now you're out. You know, like
I
come
did
on
think
with
that
us.
for a hot second when she like
Yeah,
actually unlocks the door. I'm like, oh, maybe you want to wait
yeah.
just in case.
They
Like
won't let you go
this is the
back.
beware advantage, right? Like as soon as you open it, then you can't go back.
That's what I thought. So I actually was like, oh, okay, they're gonna let her go back, and I took my eye off the ball because I it never occurred to me like, oh, she's not getting back, and they're gonna get back without her, and that is exactly what happened. MVP of the episode for sure, right? Like
Oh yeah.
she is carrying a team of 3, which actually benefits her. We will find out, that working as a team helps because these keys don't work on every lock, and you need 3 different keys to get out of here. She is very much protecting a pregnant woman, an older woman, and eventually a baby, as well as herself with minimal resources. She's had to like fight knives out of people's hands. They have multiple injuries. I think we get like ankle fracture. She gets like stabbed in the leg at some
Yep.
point. This woman is doing everything it takes to get all 3 of them through. And so it is poetic that by the end of it, all her sacrifices lead to the ultimate sacrifice where her life is the one that's lost and these people are able to move on without her.
Yeah, I mean, she is a soldier, right? She didn't make it to a high rank in the army, but her entire story is that, before her transition, she was somebody who was a cog in the war machine. And so it only makes sense that, like, she kind of goes down for the cause in a manner of speaking. And obviously, we'll talk about, the legacy that 007 leaves behind as well. I don't want to, short shrift him, but I do wonder how much Jung-jae and 149 in particular are like going to move forward with her loss in mind of like, look at all the sacrifices that she made just to protect us. She could have crossed that threshold or she could have gone off on her own. There were multiple times, right, when they said like, "Hey, go ahead, please. Like, we'll stay in here. We'll hide to the best of her ability." But time after time, she denied that in order to serve this selfless cause in an incredibly selfish game.
And you're right. She made so many sacrifices for these 2 who will be harder to move through the Squid Game for a number of reasons. For one, like this woman just gave birth, but she also has a jacked up ankle. Like
Yeah, I
it
mean,
is
they're very
true.
lucky that Noel wasn't working that day because Junhee would have been put out of commission as soon as she crossed that threshold.
Not to derail the conversation, but this is probably the first time we saw a challenge that will lead to deficits in other challenges. In season 1, you couldn't hurt yourself crossing the bridge or, in the tug of war. I mean, I guess you could like hurt yourself in the tug of war, but we never saw that.
Right.
Now, people are leaving this battered and bruised, stabbed. Like people. I mean, we saw some injuries in this episode. The only one that I think has really made it, honestly, is this ankle fracture, as well as the act of childbirth, the traumatic act of childbirth.
Yeah.
So I'm already concerned about her, but the entire time I was looking at even was it Daeho who like his Achilles was like slashed at one
Yep.
point. I said, what are you gonna do if you do make it through this round? So I wonder how many people are coming into the next game at a deficit.
Well, and also because we know that the VIPs are here, and as we experienced from season 1, the VIPs love a show in more
Mm-hmm.
ways than one. So are there going to be complaints of like, can we medevac some of these people? Like, do we really
Yeah.
want a bunch of, half our cast limping around and automatically removing themselves from competition? We want a game. We want, a head-to-head matchup here. Let's keep things feisty. Let's not have, Missy from season 29 of Survivor Style have to sit out most of these games because they have a bum ankle.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like the next game is hopscotch. Then what? It's like, all right, well, I'm out. Like I don't know. I felt like this was a little short-sighted, to have them almost fighting to the death because you still need them to participate in a few more games. Do we know how many games are left
So
at
this
this
was the
point?
4th game, so there are 2 more. 6 games.
Yeah, yeah, and maybe those are less active game, but if they have to play the actual Squid Game, I would want all my faculties about me if it was me. Like if I had to actually play a like schoolyard game one-on-one against somebody. So I already was looking at that kind of crazy, but ultimately when it comes to this group, yeah, we get the ultimate sacrifice here. Jung-jae is going to survive as kind of like the last remaining protector for Junhee, except for MG Coin, who is there as well. And I just can't trust this man. But Jung-jae even makes her sacrifice here as well. Like you said, we don't want to yada 007, but he ain't here no more.
Nope, exactly. He has been eliminated from the mission. She killed her own son. Move
Okay,
over,
she
Sierra.
didn't kill him.
No, she incapacitated him.
And then he was murdered in front of her as she screamed. It's like, well, lady, if you didn't want him to die, then you could have. See, and that's the thing. That's why this game is so gray, because if you wanted him to live, you should have let him do what he was going to do. But I think she looked at him and saw him with the capacity to murder this woman who was holding her infant child and was like, nah, I don't know, man. Like, this whole time we've been talking about, like, who's to blame here? Was she a bad mom? Is he a bad person? Was she abused? Was he, like, did she give him a fair chance? All this stuff. We've been having this conversation about her and him for 2 seasons at this point. And it finally had to land on, like, look, this kid is going to do what he's going to do, and there's nothing you can do about it. There was the time where they had to vote, and he voted to stay, and she voted to leave. And we were already looking at him like he was crazy. But now it seems like in a level of, or in a spot of self-preservation, he's like, the rules of the game. We have less than 2 minutes on the clock. I'm staring at a warm body to murder. I'm sorry she's holding a baby. That just makes her an easier target. I got to kill her mom so we can live. Mom's like, I can't let you do that. I can't let you be the awful person that I know that you are. And so I'm going to stop you. And from there, they are going to kill you. And it felt so harsh for this particular pair, because we've just known how they've been having that battle throughout, where she's been having the mental obstacles of just like, this is my kid. I need to save him no matter what. But at the same time, maybe I can't save him anymore. Maybe his decisions were let them both into the Squid Game in the first place.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that, again, I cannot imagine what was going through her head through the entirety of this sequence, as she has to make the most unenviable choice of, okay, do I let my son murder this mother and maybe her child as well, in order for the two of us to move on? Do I spurn my current family to save this new one? But it does also speak to the fact that this character, 007, perhaps quite literally has always been kind of writing checks he can never cash. I mean, let's look at the previous episode when they switch. They were initially in the opposite positions, and he was like, no, you don't have it in you to kill somebody. Let me do it. I know I can. And look, maybe he showcased that towards the end, but for what? 29 minutes out of the 30-minute time limit, he was even more catatonic than freaking Gi-hun was last episode. He's just stumbling through cracked glasses, not able to see the forest for the trees, quite literally, and is just so shell-shocked by the idea of having to kill somebody that I think the vast majority of the time he was proving that, like, yeah, he was not correct in his claim. Like, this was something that clearly was going to be a no-no. Yeah, he might be a gambling addict and a little morally decrepit outside of Squid Game, but like, there are just some things that you can't do. And I think certainly, Chappell, you and I talked last time about what this might mean in terms of a point of no return of, like, again, unlike every other game we have seen before in both iterations of Squid Game, like, we haven't really experienced a game except for that final Squid Game of, okay, you have to directly kill somebody in order to win. Usually it's just you pass the game by your own means, or someone else fails and they get taken out. This felt incredibly different, and you could see 007 sort of be a reflection of that he could just not bring himself to do it the vast majority of the time. Though you could also say, not to saddle everything onto MG Coin, but theoretically, him and Namgyo's strategy might have led to this outcome as well, because for all we know, 007 could have stumbled in on somebody, a blue, who was like on their way out. And he's like, can I just squeeze in there, get a quick kill? You know, he could have found MG Coin and Namgyu who are like, yeah, we got plenty of kills. If you want to bump yours off and then join us, go ahead. But instead, out of pure desperation in these final seconds, it leads to him trying to turn things onto someone that has been an ally to him the entire time. And so it leads to 149 having to make one of the most heartbreaking outcomes we have ever seen on this show.
Yeah, and she makes this, she has to protect this baby, right? And she has to protect Junhee, who she's been with this entire time. I understand that. And I'm kind of struggling with the idea that, you know, they did switch places, her and her son. Is there a world where, had they not switched, he was ever going to survive this? Because I think she survives it more times than him every time. You know, like,
I mean, listen, he would not have the blade to cut the umbilical cord. He would have no idea what to do when he starts going into labor.
Right. He's not staying with them either. It's just not happening. Whereas, like, she would be with them. I honestly think they probably shouldn't have switched. You know, her, in this group, I think is more powerful than him by himself in any iteration, right? On either side. And so in that group, had he even was managed to find them and just be with them, we got a few kills from this group alone. You know, he could have jumped in on one of these
dispatched one of these guys and be like, all right, get in there, 007, finish him off.
Exactly. Like, you could have double teamed a lot of these people, like we were watching MG Coin and Namgyu do as well. So yeah, bad decisions all around from a strategy standpoint. He just didn't have it in him. But you're right, the lack of targets as well. Like, it's like that move alone, it served the purpose. It's exactly what they wanted. They were like, if we kill more blues, there will be no reds. The reds cannot hunt them, thus they won't have anybody to kill. And so we saw people kind of just run out of space. Because we don't see a lot of the more craven characters who are not willing to do whatever it takes to win, make it through. And that might be by game design as well, right? You're telling people like 007, you have to kill or be killed to survive this. You know he's probably not going to make it out. Like, he's just like, this is not the game for him.
He had to pop that last pill like Minsu did, and that would have just filled him with the hallucinogenic energy to expend someo's life.
Minsu, see. There was a moment where I was concerned about Minsu, but the drugs, Mike, the drugs.
Let's get into this. So I want to go back to the ending at the end of this, but first let's focus on these sort of like more tertiary characters, because we have a little bit of like a triangle situation going on, much like one of the keys that had to be used to open the exit here, where we have 100, we have the Shaman of the Seas, you know, both big, I would say antagonists, maybe not outright villains, again, depending on your perspective of this series, running around, hiding for their lives. I will say, Chappell, this series has some like low-key and high-key funny moments. I don't think I've laughed at Squid Game as much as I did in a long time, as much as I did the moment when the shaman opens the door, steps over the threshold, calmly steps back, closes the door, walks away, and then Namgyu and MG Coin jump out and just start stabbing all of her followers.
We knew this was coming. You called it last episode. You're like, she has this team of followers. She's amassing a following because they trust in her because she's made it this far. And, you know, this lady should have been dead. She should have been dead. And a lot of them should have been dead too. They're like, okay, we follow this lady. She has the sight. She's going to show us where to go. She leads them right to their death. And there was probably the most impressed I've been at her this entire time. Like, I've hated this woman for a very long time. But I was so impressed. There were just moments where I was like, man, she can't keep getting away with this. There were even moments where I was like, am I a believer? How does she keep finding her way through these situations? No. When she does that, that's where I was like, okay, if she survives this, I'm okay. Like, I like the game move. It sucks that we do end up losing her because of one of our other villains, like you said, number 100 here, gets the drop on her. And it's what she deserves. Honestly, it is.
100%.
She asked for this.
For a number of reasons. Like, it really is biting the hand that feeds you in multiple ways. You know, first by the two of them teaming up, and I'm like, oh my God, this might be one of the best alliances in Squid Game. You know, like the two most annoying people deciding to work together. But of course, they're only in it for themselves. The Adventures of 100 was also really interesting too, because he by far looked the most like he was going to poop his pants going into that maze. But like the thing of him covering his face in blood to try to mask himself as one of the dead was like, actually a pretty good touch that I'm surprised people did not. I mean, you could say that people didn't try it before. Gi-hun and his crew actually did try it like 2 days beforehand, if you remember. Like, one of the reasons why they got the jump on the guards was because they pretended that they had died in the skirmish of the X's and O's. So maybe he took some inspiration from that. But then, of course, you know, he starts to figure out the strategy of, oh, so I don't know if I need all 3 keys, but I'd like as many keys as possible. And this was a really interesting twist that they threw in, Chappell, for this game. Because on the one hand, it could be like, oh, they really want to encourage, you know, cooperation between the Blues. I think they much more wanted to go the direction that 100 and the Shaman took, which was like, no, they have to try to take the keys from as many people as possible. You know, 100 has to take the key from his only ally and lock him in and let him be eviscerated so that he can move forward with 2 in hand. And then he takes a third, and while she's freaking monologuing at the threshold, he just shoves her back, locks the door behind her, and she is so irate that when she sees Minsu bugging the hell out, going on an absolute trip, she decides to really poke the bear, to really say, like, what are you doing right now? Don't you know who I am? And those are such fitting words. That's so well written, because the way that Minsu is behaving right now, it's a very valid question. The reason why he ends up getting his kill, the reason why the Shaman of the Sea is all washed up, in a manner of speaking, is because he believes that she is Namgyu in that moment, because she is delivering to him quite antagonistic remarks that remind him of the way Namgyu's been treating him the entire time.
Oh yeah. My boy decided, I don't know what made him do this. Maybe it's just the stress of the Squid Game or whatever, but he finds Namgyu's stash of drugs. And he decides, I'm gonna take some drugs. What the hell? You know, I need something to get me through this game. Fine. I was okay. I said, okay, cool. Then when I see what happens, he's like looking for Sammy, and he's in there like, she's not here. She's dead. Like, you watched her die. And she's like, where is she? Where is she? Where is she? I was like, oh God, he's gone. Like, he's tripping. He doesn't know where, you know, who is who. And he finds the Shaman. And as much as I hate the Shaman, I do think this sucks, because she's like, I don't even know you, sir. Do you know who I am? Like, I'm the Shaman. I got the sight. The gods are going to rip you apart.
But like, I make the same point that happened with Daeho initially. Like, when you are up against someone with a knife and you are defenseless, is that really the way to approach somebody?
No.
You know, if you could tell that something's going on with Minsu's pupils, point to something in the corner and be like, there she is. And then when he goes up there, just bolt.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They don't know how to talk to. Look, sometimes you have to learn how to talk to these people when they're under the influence. You have to be like, no. I'll help you find her. Let's go this way, and lead you to a random other person. Then you take the key and then you run. You know. But yeah, this was incredible, because I drafted Minsu to survive this whole thing, and I was thinking this whole episode, oh God, he's done. He's done. There's no way he's going to survive this. He doesn't even know which way is up. And then somehow he manages to get a kill. And it's probably, I won't say my least favorite character, but the Shaman and I, we just have a love-hate relationship. Like, I love her sometimes, and then most of the time I'm like, this lady sucks. Watching her downfall, watching 100, who is my least favorite character, by the way, watching 100 get out, take his key with him for no other reason except for probably that he was just annoyed at her. I mean, don't get me wrong, from a numbers standpoint, you definitely could have less people to go up against, so that's fine. But you could just tell. He was just annoyed. He was just, I'm sick of this lady. He takes the key, locks her in, and I'm thinking, oh, well, that sucks. My op is gone. But then I get this moment where I'm thinking, Minsu, for the draft purposes, I need you to survive this. You got to kill this lady. And luckily for him, he thinks it's Namgyu. Now, by the time he murders her, he will find out that it is not Namgyu. In fact, he thinks that it's his homegirl, Sammy. And because of that, he has a whole freak out in the hallway. I mean, he's losing it. I'm thinking, okay, I need you to snap back out of this, because he still has a target now. He can get Namgyu next round if necessary. But also, like, I need to win this draft. And so I need him to come together and get it together. This was so much fun. I'm telling you, I was not expecting this twist for Minsu.
No, I mean, I think we were both expecting Minsu to snap at some point, much like Thanos, just not in the way that we necessarily thought here. And that lines things up really interestingly for him moving forward, because I imagine, now look, there is only one pill left, but I imagine he's going to hoard that pill to himself And if Namgyu sees that cross, considering how much Namgyu has relied on these substances to get him through the game, they might get the fight that we've wanted at this point, Chappell. And I don't know if I'm putting my money on Namgyu, considering what Minsu just did.
But see, that's the thing. Minsu just had an awful trip. I doubt he wants to go back down that route. After this, like he's like shaking in the corner, counting. The guards had to come and like, hey, get up, come on, the game's over. So I don't think he wants to do that again. But I definitely don't think he's giving those drugs back to Namgyu. They're gonna fight over those drugs at some point. And there's only a little bit left, so I wouldn't be shocked if it like gets crushed or something like that, and that be the reason why it doesn't work out. But if he actively goes and takes these pills, my boy is lost. Okay, he's done. There's just no reason why he should go back down this route because this was a really bad episode for him. Like throughout, I didn't think he was going to make it, and he really got lucky.
Well, that was the entire critique leveraged towards 007, right? And that's what the shaman will disparage Minsu with, that he proves her wrong about immediately, is this idea of like, you've just been hiding this entire game. You don't have what it takes. And he proved he does have a killer instinct. He's got that dog in him, but that dog gets drawn out through some really weird peanut butter and milk bones. And we will see if that dog will go back in his house. Let's finish this podcast with where we finished the episode, because we do need to focus on the fact that Jung-jae did have a freaking baby inside of the Squid Game, and it's particularly inside of this game. I talked about it last time, but we did very much get our brief like quiet place scene, right, where like she's biting down on her jacket to avoid alerting anyone to her presence, which unfortunately failed, which is one of 120's many kills that she was able to claim. But I absolutely loved the brutal symbolism that happened at the end of this episode, where you have in one room two pairs of parents and children, and one pair gets saved and one gets spurned. This idea that you have one mother incredibly protective over her child, wrapping her up in her own green tracksuit, perhaps a symbol of this baby becoming a part of the Squid Game in more ways than one moving forward, as we'll get into. And then the other one with the mother having to dispatch of her son in more ways than one. It's a trope, but it's a trope I love to see, Chappell. Going all the way back to Lost Season 1, the idea of life and death happening pretty much simultaneously. One child enters, one child leaves.
Yeah, and we don't really know what happens to the child that enters, because obviously it would be tough to raise a child for the next couple days without, proper, accommodations. I mean, this woman just gave birth. She's not going to go sleep on a bunk bed with this baby. It's going to be crying. It's going to need milk, and it probably need medical attention, potentially. There's a lot of reasons why you shouldn't just give birth in the Squid Game and then try to just continue your life. And so do the guards address it? Is it something that they like, hey, lady, look, we understand you gave birth. You're still in this, but your kid has come with us. Maybe that's her new driving force for like, I got to win this thing because I got to get my kid back. Maybe I just don't know. And we've talked about the spinoff potential of what does it look like if we need a new front man one day, and this kid has been raised in the Squid Game. He's seen it close up. Maybe the front man takes him in and is like, oh yeah, this is my baby now, and the baby is now in charge of the whole operation one
Boss
day.
baby.
Boss baby. Yeah, exactly. So it's like they could go so many different directions with it, but I want to know the immediate direction, right? Like I don't know. I don't care where long term ends up. I want to know what happens the moment she enters the room or the guards come find her, or even the moment after they kill 007 and they look at her holding a child and think, okay, now what? Because these guards have some level of humanity. Some of them do. We've seen it with 11 with her stuff. So yeah, I wonder if they are going to look at this baby and be like, all right, give me the kid, or if they're just like, we'll get back to you.
Yeah, let's talk through the options here, because I imagine we're going to get this question answered as soon as next episode, because much like many reality TV producers have experienced during their respective tenures, there come moments where players make decisions that very much lie in this unprecedented territory, and it lies within you to be like, how do we handle this, especially when it comes to the rules of the game? My money would probably be on much like your phone getting confiscated in class, and your teacher says like, I'll give this to you at the end of the period. I
Mm-hmm.
could see a situation where like, the pink guards take the baby and it's like, upon you winning the Squid Game, your child will be returned to you. On the other hand, again, the VIPs are coming, and we know that these, pathetic, amoral, rich, mostly men want to see some good TV. And it is pretty good TV to like have this woman have to defend her life and her child's life now, considering how much of a game changer this is for everybody involved.
I think it does change the game for literally everybody, even Gi-hun, right? So like his goal was to win, but if the baby needs to get back to the mom, then maybe his goal is no longer to win, right? Maybe his goal is to make sure that we get this child back, because that to me is the greater good here.
Yeah.
Now his goal is to obviously take down the Squid Game. Is there a world where he can do both? Where we can help her try to get her child back, but then, like maybe we're at the final 3 or 4 or whatever. And then now I go on my side quest to try to take down, the big boss while she handles whatever business she has to handle. And there's an ideal situation where maybe it's her and, MG Coin. And it's just the they're 2 out of the 3 of the last people. And
Yeah.
now, he's already said, I'm willing to
Ki-hun,
die.
you should have gone to the end with the pair. That's always bad business.
It's always bad business. But he's already said he's willing to die so that the kid can live. But I don't believe him. He says like we found out in this episode that he loves her. Or at least that's what Namju says. But he doesn't deny it. He really doesn't. Up until this point, I kind of been looking at him as somebody who felt probably like a little guilt-ridden because of the way he left her, pregnant and alone. But if what Namju is saying is true, and he's actually in love with her, I do think there's a world where he's going to try to make it out with her and the baby. And so you might have all hands on deck trying to make sure this baby survives. And Junhee is with the baby as well. So, and there's a lot of people around who would be willing to do that, the older woman as well. And so I think that does literally change what I'm thinking is the outcome of the game, because I've always been looking at it as Gi-hun's trying to take down Squid Game or trying to win again. But if the baby is at stake, then no, I think somebody else needs to win again. Now, there is a really weird world where Gi-hun just goes ahead, wins again, and he takes the baby. He used to have one of those.
I was going to say, I can start over again.
Right. So maybe he could go back that route, but I don't know. I think this is the new aim for the end game. I think we should really be trying to figure out what we're going to do with this kid.
Or listen, Gi-hun has a history as well of like making familial connections outside of Squid Game, considering he hooked up Sung-woo's mom with the North Korean's brother. So I now sort of almost go back on the point that I started the podcast with, which is you could say on paper what Gi-hun did, really take his first life in a purposeful manner, is something that could have him go down this entire individualistic, now I have to win to talk with the front man and get my revenge path. But maybe the culmination of losing 120, losing 007, albeit at the hands of maybe their own people, and this child might be enough rally around the flag to bring this disparate alliance back together. Maybe MG Coin is still kind of like on the outs, but if Gi-hun's able to kind of get his shit together and wake up out of his stupor, maybe there is now something to fight for again. That there's this idea that we lost Jung-jae, we lost 120, we lost 007. Yes, some of this may have felt like my fault, but we have to make sure that their deaths were not in vain, and we have new life to fight for now. As we approach the halfway point of this third and final season already, I could very much see that happen. Or we could really just go full on fatalistic, nihilistic, the entire point of the show in the first place, and be like, nope, everyone's selfish. Screw the baby. The baby's the part of the island now.
I like that too. I like both options, honestly, because it's still the question, right? Are these people inherently good? Are they just awful bad? Are they inherently bad? Are they in an awful place? Are they doing bad things because their back is against the wall and they have to survive? And I think if we all rally behind, the baby is important, then that would prove that there's a little humanity in all of them. But that's a little too cute to me.
Well, I think especially because depending on whichever philosopher you follow, there is this idea that we might be born with a blank slate, a tabula rasa,
if you will. Rasa.
Exactly. And so it's this idea of like, to your point, if the theme is, are we inherently good? Are we inherently bad? this is kind of one of the guinea pigs of that. And so maybe
Mhm.
this thematic idea of like, we must save this child before they have the impurities of society imprinted on them could make them an interesting proxy between the two sides.
Yeah, but also this kid has been traumatized at birth. I mean,
Yeah.
like the first thing this kid has laid his eyes on is the murder of a woman's child in front of her. Like if this is anything like if this is Harry Potter, like this kid can see the hippogriffs. You know what I'm saying? Like he can see the Dementors or whatever.
Yeah, the
What's the
Thestrals, the
hippogriffs?
Thestrals.
The Thestrals. That's what it is. Oh, thank God. I was gonna get there eventually. But yeah, this kid can see it at birth. He's like, I don't even remember, but I know I can see him. Like I think that's crazy to start your life like that. And so maybe he doesn't remember, right? Baby's brains are like mush. Who knows? But also, that's a pretty hard thing to ever have to like deal with if it ever does come back, if that memory does surface. So yeah, if we're trying to protect this kid from the world, we're not doing a great job.
Well, listen, this episode had me crying like a baby multiple times due to the brutal losses that we had with a couple
Yes.
of these characters. But as we said at the very top here, it's a firm reminder that this is Squid Game at the end of the day. And even if
Mhm.
this, iteration of it was more so about alliances and allegiances and loyalty, it is a quite literal cutthroat game at the end of the day. And losses must be incurred, and they came in a couple of forms. And I imagine that the kill count will only rack up from here. I think we came into this game with 60. I think we got rid of even more than half of them. I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised if we're at like 25 or something, maybe 26 if you count the baby by the end of this, because we're really barreling towards this, Chappell. There's only 4 episodes left of Squid Game in general. There's only 2 games. And I would imagine, for the final game, they want to get down to hopefully 2, if not 3 or 4. So we gotta start piling up more bodies. And that's not even to say about some of the skirmishes that might occur between the games. So
Mhm.
this was, again, such an incredible episode that really serves as what Squid Game is to its point. That there is a reason why, yes, some people wanted to vote to end these games, but why they were in there in the first place, which is the extent that each person would take in order to win a life-changing amount of money. How far would you go? What amount could you do to excuse yourself? What would you do for a Klondike bar? How
Right.
about 4.56 billion of them? And
Yeah.
so I absolutely adored this episode. I imagine that next episode will have to fill in the blanks a bit more, make up for lost time with what's happening off the island with Jun-ho and Captain Park. We got like a smidge of Newell. It does seem like, as I talked about last time, she is going to try to get 246 out by having him hide in plain sight as a guard now that he's recovered. So we're going to touch upon those storylines, but I really hope the focus is going to be on just the brutal aftermath of what hide and seek was able to bring.
Yes, and I can't wait, Mike. This was so much fun. I'm telling you, might have been my favorite episode since season 1 for sure.
Yeah, I could not agree more. But let us know your thoughts as well in the comments, and we'll see if we can keep on a rolling with episode 3 tomorrow to find out all of the fallout from hide and seek and perhaps gear up for the penultimate game in Squid Game. Thank you all, as always, so much for listening. Chappell, fantastic insight as per usual. Until tomorrow, everybody, take care. Bye bye.